Alright, how's it going? This is my discussion on ore processing in GT5U, GT5 regular, GTCEu, anything based around GT5. So, I wanted to first clarify for anybody that says that things will be unbalanced and origin would have to be fixed to implement these kind of things. No, it most definitely does not. At least if you have things balanced around GT5, U, origin, because this is our factory on our GT5U Bears Den Edition server, where we have gotten to ED at least. We kind of went on a hiatus right before we got our nuclear reactor up and running, but this is our base here, and we basically implemented everything I'm trying to talk to you guys doing in here. So the first thing that I would suggest is adding a roaster. It's something that Greg had in GT6. We added it in here. It's very simple machine based off of the arc furnace, sort of, where you have oxygen in and your sulfide goes in, and it gives you a small pile of dust for each part of that sulfide and some sulfur dioxide. Now in GT6, Greg also allows air to be used. We do have an air vent that was added in this version as well that will collect air. In GT6, the air recipe only gives you 80% of the solid materials back. Been a while since I've been here, so I'm looking for the air vent. But there's the air vent. It's just a cover. Basically, it was so you could put air into a centrifuge and centrifuge it to get the nitrogen and oxygen out. But that would work as well on a roaster for before you get that stuff. But we also added recipes into the primitive blast furnace as well. And I guess I should have stated this. I would not suggest this as a standalone thing, because yes, there are tons of people that have gotten so used to this, they're gonna nope right the fuck out of it if you do it. But as I've been trying to get through to your community, is I think you really need to do a easy mode, hard mode setting. So you guys could have it however you want to have it by default. I would suggest the way I'm suggesting here, but if you guys don't think that that's a good default setting, then have it the other way or something else. Leave the easy mode for where you can just smelt it up, and I'll get to that why in a minute. But and put the more complicated stuff like what I'm suggesting here under a hard mode. Have the glass nerf in there, the wood nerf in there, this change in there, and then everybody can be happy. It doesn't have to be a one size fits all. I would prefer it this way. I think it's the way it should be, which again, I'll get into. So in your version and GT5U, pyrite, for instance, when you get it all the way down to the electrolyzer, it is 3 parts, 3 pyrite, which only gives you 1 iron and 2 sulfur, because it is mainly sulfur. It's FeS2. But in your version, this recipe right here for smelting is 1-for-1. And if it's not for the dust, it is for every processing step before that. Which means that pyrite is worth as much as pure iron ore, which makes absolutely no logical sense. Pyrite is a sulfide mainly made of sulfur. It should not give you full iron ingot in any way, shape, or form. We give 3 nuggets, or you can roast it, which will give you a small pile per, or you can do the electrolyzer. And the reason why I disagree with the GT5U, other than the fact that it's not realistic, semi-realistic, or even logical, that you can throw the ore or any step of processing the ore down in and get the full amount out of it, versus you put all the work into setting up all of the processing and then you get less. You should get more for more work, not less for less work. And I did hear the argument that, well, the byproducts is what the process is for, and I disagree. If you ore wash, let me find the actual, here, we'll do it this way. Pyrite ore. You get sulfur, tricalcium sulfate, iron dust. What do you need those first 2 things for? Ever. What use do you have for sulfur? And I still have not figured out what that tricalcium phosphate stuff is good for. Same with Chaco. Chaco only gives you 2 nuggets of copper. It gives you pyrite. We just discussed how useless that is. Cobalt. Okay, cobalt's useful. Cadmium. It's pretty much useless. There's very little uses for it. And then gold if you go through the really hard process. And if you do it, which this will be another complaint for another day, if you do the nitric acid thing, you can literally get 1 copper per chalcopyrite for running it through the vitriol setup, which is what we have here with nitric acid, which is a nice bonus for people if they want to go through the work. That process, as much as I disagree with it, which I'll explain why in a minute, I know I keep putting all these off, that is the way that I believe the GT5U should work. You do the work, you build the setups, and you get more because of doing it, not you get less for doing it. The big one that I hated was Malachite. That was the worst one in my opinion. Malachite only gives 1 copper nugget in here. It gives copper as a byproduct, brown limonite, and calcite. Who in the hell ever wants more brown limonite? And who the hell ever wants calcite? There's nothing that really uses calcite. Calcite is literally useless because nobody uses it for cooking pyrite in a primitive blast furnace, which is a great idea. It's something Greg did in GT2 through GT4. If you want to see that, I can load that up and show that to you as well. But this was the biggest one because if I remember correctly, in GT5U, before we messed with things, if you ran it through the EDF, through that roasting crap, you actually got more copper from malachite than you did native copper. Now, I have not looked at it in GTCEu. Hopefully you guys will fix that. but I don't know because I haven't looked at it. But something that Greg does, which I'll show you here in a minute for Malachite, really makes it better, which is something I would love to see you guys implement. I know you guys have never played GT6, so you guys are pulling everything from GT5U, GTCE, and GT New Horizons. Well, I would prefer you pull from Greg himself and take some inspiration from GT6. And I've got that game loaded up as well, and I'll show you some of that in a minute. Now, one of the biggest bitches people have is they don't like dealing with nuggets. They don't like having to craft their nuggets back together. And I'm going to bring up GT6 for a minute, and I will show you. Get desktop over here. Okay, so this is my GT6 world. Now, there's a whole lot of what's here that you couldn't implement because Greg does no magic boxes. Basically, every machine has to have a power sending unit. So this is to give heat to this machine. This boiler setup is to give rotational engine to that machine, so on and so forth. But the one thing that you could implement is this right here. Greg added his own hoppers. Now you don't have to go crazy with it. Greg literally went crazy with it. But you could just add a GT version of a hopper. And the reason why you would do so is because of this right here. If I take, oh, by the way, really need to add this tool. It's freaking awesome. It's basically a Swiss Army knife. It has a knife, a saw, wire cutter, scissors, file, screwdriver, and a chisel. But anyways, I can click on them like this, and it now will emit divisibles of whatever of 1, or 2, or 3. And it goes all the way up to 64. So I can do that. So what you would do basically is set this to a divisible of 9, set this up underneath your furnace, and it would only output when there are 9 of them in there, and you guys could make a machine that would, like a early game packager. You need EU for the regular packager, but you could make a early game like Steam one, or implement it into the nuggets into the forge hammer where you're bashing them back together. It would make Steam Age more interesting, and people may not hate it as much if it was given a little bit more life. There's also something in here called a dust funnel. I'm trying to think right now where I have one, to be honest. I may not have a dust funnel, but I can get one real quick. But a dust funnel is basically like a hopper, but it's for dust instead of ingots. Let's grab one of these. I haven't used one of these in a long time, but basically, you see the bottom there? If I find my monkey wrench, there it is. If I smack it with my monkey wrench, it now goes to normal size instead of block size. Small dust, tiny dust, 1/72nd dust because Greg is a dickhead. But you could implement something like this even for dusts, so that any dust that comes in here it's going to get put out at the size it needs. So if you wanted full dust, when you get 4 of the same kind in here, it'll output. If you're interested, I have a video showing how I did a collection thing with hoppers set that way, where you wouldn't have to worry about things getting stuck in here. GT4R, Trinstar, and GTC expanded also, he had it. He made a dust funnel that had a GUI and had like 9 slots for catching things, and it would just put them together and put them on the side. I can show you what it looks like too if you're interested. Another great thing that Greg added that I would love to see in GT5 is these. They're item barrels, and the great thing about them is if we come downstairs, this is my centrifuge that puts out nuggets of copper, lead, silver, tin, and gold. And I don't have anything to put them together. The barrels do it by the pipe. So you put the pipe across the back, it puts them into the barrel and auto converts it to the size that I have saved in here. And then you can just pop them out by clicking the number of what you want. This is a great solution. It means you have to have, you know, all of these barrels for all kinds of things, you know, but this is, you know, GregTech. You should have to build a huge factory, and AE2 should not be the, you know, do all, win all. There should be machines that can do things. You know, I never use AE2. I find it to be a crutch. I don't like it. I know most people do. It's not my thing. I do most everything in my world, GT5 or GT6, through piping and machines. It's the way I like it. But now GregTech 6 does things a little bit different. You will see that if I look at pyrite, for instance, well, hold on. Let me get out of that. So, chalcopyrite, for instance, uses, you have to do a crucible. It gives you 2 copper nuggets. And this is basically your furnace. Now, Greg does allow things to be put in a furnace, but only things that are under a certain temperature. Once you get past like tier 1 metals, copper, tin, lead, stuff like that, you gotta have a crucible. And I in no way want you to add these because you would piss everybody off. They are absolutely great. They're the backbone of GT6. Nobody would play with your mod if you added them. People hate them. But this is why Greg stopped GT5 to go to GT6, was that crucible. He was the ingot mold and plate mold that you guys have is literally his way of trying to interject being able to mold your ingots into GT5. You were going to, if he finished it, from what I understand, you were going to use the fluid extractor and melt down your metals and cast them as ingots. And you would have to use the alloy furnace to smelt everything into ingots, which is another thing that GT5U had, where you could smelt ingots with a ingot mold in the alloy furnace. So even though the regular furnace won't accept nuggets, it will. And another suggestion from GT6 is we have two different kinds of molds, which you could do as well. These are extruder shapes though, but it's basically the same thing. There's low heat and there's high heat. Now you would want to do something that is different because, well, steel is pretty easy here. So we just use a double steel plate to make the extruder shape, and the high heat is tungsten carbide. But you could do something lower for like copper and things like that. You could make a ceramic mold. Personally, I think the steel one is not that big a deal. I like the idea of having to work your way up to things. So I think leaving it the way it is perfectly fine. But that's just a suggestion to show you some stuff that's over here in GT6. Also, this thing, absolute great tool. Suggest adding it as well. It basically tells you everything. Early game. It's just a pane of glass and a stick to make one of these. Mine is pink because it's made out of a gem plate instead of a glass pane. But it'll tell you what's in your pipes. It'll tell you what's in your drums, portable drums. Another great idea. I think you guys have like wooden barrels, but these things are awesome. The fact that you can click them and they will automatically output to the bottom, beautiful. Now, they won't tell you anything about item pipes other than what the settings are on it, but like the hopper that we were discussing earlier, it'll tell you what your settings are on it. Great item. Really suggest adding one. And this is our roaster here in GT6. You might recognize the texture. Basically, same exact thing. There's the air that I was talking about where you get 80% out. And yes, you guys don't have one in 70 seconds, so you'll have to round up or down to a tiny pile size. But, you know, that's the way it is here. And that's what I would suggest for GTCEu, at least as a hard setting, because you really should give people a reason to set up ore processing rather than smelting their ores as soon as they crush them because they only want copper out of it or iron out of it or whatnot. Because there's no reason to process a lot of ores. Mostly the sulfides. There is no reason to process them fully because the byproducts are crap. But this is my thoughts. If you guys would like to see the world over here, if you'd like to see our fork of this, I can give you a link to the GitHub. I'll try to remember to post it with the video so you guys can see the code we implemented here and be able to see how it's different than regular GT5U or New Horizons or whatever. But that's my 2 cents. Please take the roasting out of the EDF. That was a horrible addition. A roaster is an easy thing to add. Oh, I did forget one thing. I wanted to show you guys the bathing. Almost forgot that. So, the way Greg made malachite a little bit less shit. is if you run your malachite through sodium persulfite. This is a little differently done, but same basic concept. Go to the bath here, and let's see if we can find malachite. I really should have just looked up malachite. It would have been easier. Well, here, right there was some malachite. We'll just look at ways of getting it. Still going to take a week to get through here. Okay, so 1 malachite, sodium persulfite. This is potassium sulfite, same thing. And in here we just use dust and water rather than the liquid like is in GTCEu. But same thing. It gives you 9 tiny piles of copper. So if you go through the processing to get this bath setup, which by the way works on time, not on electricity, because you're literally just soaking it in the shit. Another thing Greg did in GT6 that's awesome. It takes 144 ticks to do this, and then you get a full unit of copper out of it. And then if you take that malachite and you put it into a where is it? Boxer, boxinator, bath. If you put it in a bath with sulfuric acid, you will get your refined out of it. You get a chance, a 50% chance, 9 times, 10 times of more tiny refined malachite. But you also get 3 liters of, or 3 units of blue vitriol, and blue vitriol is another copper dust. So setting up for sulfite bath, you can get 1 full copper out of it. Set up the vitriol processing and sulfuric acid bathing, you get 1 copper for every 2. So it makes malachite less crap than what it typically is, but it takes way more processing, way more setup to do it. Because technically in IRL, malachite is like 70% copper. So that's not why that's why Greg did it this way. And the nice thing with that is the vitriols are a closed loop, which is something I, kind of find annoying at times, but this is the vitriol right here. So you got your copper bearing stuff, sulfuric acid gives off hydrogen, comes down here, and it gives you sulfuric acid, goes back up. I can explain it better if you need it, but that's how it works. And that's for a number of different things. Greg has many different vitriols in here. Vitriol, spell it correctly. So there's black vitriol, blue, which is copper, green, which is iron, red, pink, cyan, white, gray, Martian, and clay. Which is the one thing I was complaining about Chaco earlier that I wanted to mention. And I almost forgot. Sorry, I'm a little absent-minded. Nitric acid, the process that you guys are using that uses chalcopyrite and what is the nickel one? I can't remember the nickel one. You guys, I'm sure you'll know what I'm talking about. Those two being used in nitric acid to give you platinum group sludge. That is a recipe that was added into GT5U from IHL because IHL wanted to remove the recipes from there because he wanted to go into a different direction. And then he kind of canceled the mod and whatever. So he talked to Bloody and asked Bloody to add them into GTCEu directly. The problem being that that's not really the best way to do it because your platinum group sludges should come from things that are more platinum based. Now, in here, we don't use nitric acid. In here, we use Aqua Riga, which I do believe you guys could do. Because I do believe you have hydrochloric acid. Aqua Riga, or however they pronounce it, is hydrochloric acid and nitric acid mixed together. That gives you Aqua Riga, and that is where you get your platinum group sludge, which comes from sheldonite. That's a different thing. Iridium, meteoric iron, but that's not something you probably will have unless Galacticraft actually exists in that version. But anything that's like platinum based, iridium based, anything that's in the platinum group gives platinum group sludge. Nickel, that's the best way of getting it, is pure nickel. Now, granted, in GT6, we don't have pure nickel ore in the world. So this would be a balance thing for you guys, because you do have pure nickel in the world. It would give them way more opportunity to do this. But you're already doing it for Chaco, which is the main part of a chalcopyrite vein. So I don't think it would be that big of a change if you did nickel versus chalcopyrite and the other one. But osmium, iridium, sheldonite, palladium, platinum, all those things give you your platinum group sludge. And then your platinum group sludge is centrifuged just like it is over there to give you, platinum group stuff. Your platinum, your iridium, your osmium. And from it, you get chloroplatinic acid, which gives you platinum, hydrochloric acid, and oxygen. So you can mix your hydrochloric acid back to your nitrogen. And it also gives you nitrogen monoxide and water. If you put most of what you get out of this back together, you'll get your Aqua Riga. You can close loop this pretty close. I think it needs extra oxygen, but I can't remember. We have a video on it if you want to see it. But that's the other major thing that I would prefer change. Because, for me, because chalcopyrite is so crap as far as copper content, I save it. I won't process my chalcopyrite until I can run it through nitric, because I get one full copper from it. And so, for us getting through our Steam Age on the GTCEu server we made, I had to take out 2 copper veins just to get enough native copper to finish what I wanted for what we needed to get through Steam Age and starting electric, because there's very little native copper in there, and I wasn't using the chalcopyrite at all. I have 2 item barrels full of chalcopyrite and pyrite waiting to be processed. Now, I kind of think of it as having copper in the bank, because once I get the nitric acid setup done, I'll be swimming in it, because every one of those dust will give me a copper. But I would honestly rather just process it early on, even if it gave me 2 nuggets each, and then use a proper, platinum group thing to get my platinum group sludge. But I think I have rambled long enough. This is 35 minutes. Have a good one, and hope this helps you guys decide on something.